The morning fog thickens over the River Thames, turning London into a ghostly silhouette. From the mist, the sharp outlines of wooden masts pierce the sky, merchant ships, war vessels, and exploration fleets all preparing for distant horizons. Dockworkers shout orders, ropes slap against wet planks, and barrels of spices, gunpowder, and silver clatter into cargo holds. This is the heartbeat of an empire being born. Inside a dimly lit room near the port, members of the newly empowered East India Company gather around a massive world map stretched across the table. Candle flames dance as red ink slowly spreads across Asia, Africa, and the Americas. These men speak not only of trade but of influence, armies, and territories. Their signatures on parchment will soon decide the fate of millions who have never heard their names. Across the seas, the British arrive with polished uniforms and polished ambitions. In the bustling ports of India, local merchants watch cautiously as negotiations begin, first with gifts and agreements, then with demands and military pressure. In Africa, explorers push deeper inland, claiming lands in the name of distant kings. In the Caribbean, plantations thrive under harsh labor systems, generating enormous wealth that pours back into London's banks and aristocratic estates. Back in Britain, a young officer stands on the deck of a newly built ship. He looks toward the horizon and whispers the phrase echoing through the rising empire, "The sun will never set on us." His words symbolize both the confidence and arrogance of a nation convinced of its destiny. But behind every new flag raised lies uncertainty. Different peoples, tribes, kingdoms, villages, watch the red banners with mixed emotions. Trade or takeover, partnership or domination, the world is changing, and the British Empire is the force pushing that change across continents. A grey sky hangs low over Manchester as colossal chimneys pump clouds of smoke into the air, turning day into a permanent twilight. The Industrial Revolution has transformed Britain into a roaring engine of steel and steam. Inside the factories, gears grind, belts snap, and molten metal glows like fragments of captured lightning. Every clang of a hammer echoes the empire's rising power. Steam engines thunder across the countryside, slicing through farmland that once echoed only with horse hooves and village chatter. Railways crawl over hills, carve through valleys, and stretch toward ports, connecting the industrial heart of Britain to the far edges of the world. These metal veins carry not just goods but ideology, ambition, and control. Every new track laid strengthens the empire's grip on global trade. In London, Parliament debates expansion with calm confidence. Maps lie rolled across polished oak tables, red territories spreading wider each year. Politicians boast of prosperity, civilization, and progress, while factory owners count profits that grow with every shipment sent to colonies across the world. Meanwhile, on foreign soil, the empire's impact is felt in ways both constructive and devastating. In India, British-built railways link cities but also tighten administrative control. In Africa, telegraph lines hum across deserts and jungles, allowing messages to travel faster than ever before. Indigenous kingdoms encounter a power backed not only by soldiers, but by machines, guns that reload faster, ships that sail farther, and factories that never sleep. Missionaries build schools and churches. Engineers build bridges and ports. Soldiers enforce order where resistance grows. Many locals adapt to the new systems, others resent the intrusion. Where some see opportunity, others see the quiet dismantling of culture and autonomy. Industrial strength has made Britain unstoppable, at least for now. The empire is no longer just expanding, it is accelerating, powered by fire, iron, and an unshakable belief in its own dominance. Heat rises from the dust-covered streets of Delhi as tension thickens like storm clouds. Whispered rumors travel from barracks to bazaars, from temples to countryside villages. The spark finally ignites, the Indian Rebellion of 1857. Muskets crack, swords clash, and smoke fills the skies over cities like Meerut, Lucknow, and Jhansi. Indian soldiers who once served the British march against them, driven by anger, betrayal, and a blazing desire for dignity. The empire, shocked and unprepared, scrambles to crush the uprising with brutal force. Streets become battlegrounds, palaces become command centers, lives are rewritten in fire. But India is only the beginning. Across Africa, resistance grows in powerful waves. Warrior kings gather their people, armed with shields, spears, and unbroken spirit. In regions like Sudan, Ashanti lands, and the Zulu kingdom, colonial troops find themselves facing armies fighting not for glory but for survival. Each battle shakes the empire's confidence. The myth of invincibility begins to fade. In Ireland, famine scars run deep, and resentment fuels nationalist movements. Speeches, poetry, and secret meetings spread a message sharper than any sword: freedom is worth the risk. British rule, once unquestioned, becomes a target of defiance. The Middle East, too, becomes restless. Local leaders challenge unfair taxes, land control, and cultural interference. Revolts flare like desert lightning, sudden, fierce, unforgettable. Throughout the empire, the contradictions grow louder. Posters speak of civilizing missions, but in reality many communities face heavy taxation, cultural suppression, and economic exploitation. Indigenous soldiers wearing British uniforms begin questioning why they fight to defend a power that denies them respect. Poets write verses of pain and pride. Activists risk prison to spread ideas of rebellion. Spiritual leaders call for unity. Women participate as spies, messengers, and warriors, rewriting their own roles in history. By the dawn of the 20th century, the empire still stands, but its foundations tremble. And the voices of the oppressed, once whispers, now roar like thunder across continents. Dark clouds gather over Europe as 1914 explodes into chaos. Britain, confident and commanding, marches into the First World War with millions of soldiers, yet not just from its own island. Troops from India, Africa, the Caribbean, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand are called to fight in a war they did not start. Young men who have never seen Europe now face machine guns, trenches, and poison gas. Mud becomes their world, courage becomes their only weapon. The empire fights bravely, but the cost is unimaginable. Britain loses generations of sons. Colonies sacrifice their own, believing loyalty will bring respect, rights, or reforms. Instead, after the war, promises remain broken, and the empire, though victorious, feels drained, shaken, and older. Barely 2 decades later, the world breaks again. World War II erupts with even greater fury. London burns under German bombs, nights lit by fire instead of street lamps. Civilians huddle in underground stations as sirens scream. Food grows scarce, fear grows common, and the once invincible empire realizes it is fighting not for dominance but for survival. Across the empire, the story repeats. Soldiers from colonized nations fight bravely on distant fronts, in deserts, jungles, seas, and skies. Their blood mixes with that of British troops, creating a bond forged in sacrifice. But this time, something changes. Those who return home after the war do not return as quiet subjects. They return as men who fought tyranny abroad and now question tyranny at home. Meanwhile, America and the Soviet Union rise like giants on the global stage. Britain, bombed, exhausted, and economically shattered, can no longer maintain control over half the world. The cost of empire becomes too heavy, cracks spread through its political core. As the guns finally fall silent in 1945, the British Empire stands alive, but wounded, weakened, and surrounded by nations no longer willing to bow. The war has ended, but the British Empire wakes to a world transformed. Its treasury is drained, its armies tired, and its colonies no longer silent. The once unshakable empire stands like an aging giant surrounded by rising voices demanding freedom, dignity, and destiny. The loudest voice comes from South Asia. Crowds flood the streets of Delhi, Lahore, Karachi, Calcutta, millions marching, chanting, refusing to bow. Leaders such as Gandhi, Jinnah, and Nehru negotiate, protest, and reshape the political landscape. After decades of struggle, the inevitable arrives. Britain grants independence. The Union Jack lowers, and 2 new nations, India and Pakistan, are born in 1947. Fireworks burst in the sky, but so do tears, as partition brings both celebration and tragedy. The empire has lost its brightest jewel. Then the wave spreads. In Africa, a continent long carved into colonial borders awakens with force. Ghana becomes the first sub-Saharan nation to gain independence in 1957, inspiring dozens more. From Kenya's forests to Nigeria's bustling cities, people rise to reclaim their histories. Flags change, parliaments form, schools open under local leadership. The idea of empire begins to feel ancient, out of place in a world chasing equality and identity. In the Caribbean, islands find their own paths, some toward independence, others toward self-governance. In the Middle East, new nations redefine borders and alliances. Everywhere, Britain steps back, sometimes peacefully, sometimes amid conflict, but always with the growing realization that its century of dominance has ended. By the 1970s, only fragments of the old empire remain. And in 1997, when Hong Kong is handed back to China, a symbolic final chapter closes. The century-long arc from global power to global retreat is complete. The British Empire leaves behind a legacy both brilliant and broken: railways, languages, laws, scars, and stories. What once claimed that the sun will never set, finally watches sunset fall.